Let's just say good afternoon, everybody. My name is Russ. I own CJ's Lawn and Snow. Been in the plowing industry for almost 20 years. Um, Growing over the years, we've evolved from I started out with one truck back in the day to partnering with a gentleman who's I since bought him out in 2020, and we keep expanding the business. And we decided to transition our salt operations to liquid de-icing. Here's a picture just of our liquid de-icing fleet that goes out every storm out of our shop here. So a little bit about our plowing operation. We cover about 100 acres every winter. So each snow event, we've got trucks, loaders, skid loaders, everything going out to take care of our customers. We do mainly commercial and apartment buildings, manufacturing facilities, stuff like that. I guess the reason we decided to get started into liquid de-icing was number one, we're doing this because I want to pass something on down to the kids if they're ever interested in it. And we had a lot of customers complaining over the years about salt in the buildings. And all the contractors know, whether you're a contractor, your municipality, school district, the number one problem is slip and falls. It's a liability issue. So that leads to a lot of oversalting. So it got me thinking after taking the Saltwise class, what can we do about this? Because we are oversalting. And then it really hit home when we take our annual trip up to Hayward every year. That's myself and my two boys on the boat and them playing in the lake. And my oldest son asked me one time, he said, "Dad, why is the water so clear up here, but when we get home, it's not?" That kind of hit home a little bit. A lot of my best memories are going out fishing with my grandpa when I was a young kid and spending a lot of time on the water. So it got me thinking, like, if I'm going to do this, and obviously my goal of owning the business is to make money and pass that down. But if that's all I can pass down and our resources aren't there to where they can enjoy the water with their kids and go fishing, what's it worth? It's really not worth much if they can't have the same memories that I have, because we all know memories just they last a lifetime. Money's temporary, but the memories are there forever. So that was the main reason why we really decided to dig into this. A little bit of how we started. We know the equipment's expensive. There's a learning curve. So we decided to start with one truck. We took 5 customers that were on that route and talked to them, laid out the pros and cons of the liquids. Admitted we weren't 100% sure of what we were doing, but we wanted to give it a try. All 5 of them seemed to be on board with us, so we decided to go for it last year with the one truck. Starting small gave us the ability to learn because, like I said, there are learning curves. There's times that we were ready to go back to just spreading salt, but we decided to stick with it, and glad we did. And also, starting with one truck, you ease into the expense because the equipment is very expensive. It's a lot to swallow. And then we gained at the end of the year, we called our customers and said, "Hey, we did it for a year. How are you liking it? What are your thoughts? We'll go back to the rock salt if you want us to, or we can proceed with the liquids." All 5 of those customers said, "We never want to see rock salt again. It didn't track into their buildings. There was a lot less dead vegetation." And so we really got digging into it for this last winter, this upcut or the winter we're currently in. A lot of benefits to it as well. We always used to have a loader sitting at our salt shed that would have to reload salt trucks. Since we've gone to liquids, we have on-site remote fill stations. So we don't have to have a piece of equipment tied up to just sit at the salt shed. That can actually be out moving snow. And we cut salt by quite a bit, over 60%, which led to our profits going up. And whether you're a contractor or a municipality, everybody has a budget. So if on the municipality side of things, if you can cut salt down and save a little bit on that budget, maybe that can go towards some better equipment, to some other things. So there's a lot of benefits to doing it. And one of the biggest things was our employees are happier, which is key because that's without them we can't do it regardless. Um, so here, like I said, we've been able to cut our salt by over 60%. We spray 6,000 gallons a storm roughly. It's 6 to 7,000 gallons depending on the storm. So then that equates to about 6.9 tons of salt to make that brine for that 6,000 gallons. We were previously spreading 20 to 21 tons of rock salt. So that's quite a savings there when you look at that. And that's kind of an eye opener as to, like I said, on the budget end of things, as to look at it as the fact of you're throwing $100 bills on the ground and not getting anything in return. There was a lot of salt going out when we had cut it down by that much. It made a big difference. And like I said, we admitted, we admit we were oversalting, and a lot of that comes from the liability. And every third commercial on the radio is on the radio or TV as a lawyer, one call, that's all, looking to get somebody money, and that's where the oversalting comes in. The property owner doesn't want to slip and fall. The contractor doesn't want to slip and fall. Um, eh, and that I think is a big hang up for a lot of things. And so one thing with the liquids is we were able to achieve our same goals with using a lot less salt. Um, when you look at my two pictures there of the sidewalks, one is of a sidewalk of a daycare we take care of, and one is a sidewalk of just another building that I snapped. And when you really save on profits due to sidewalk salt. Your sidewalk salt is more expensive. It's treated salt. So when you're looking at throwing down all that salt and we're achieving the same results in a high traffic area, that's where we saw our biggest savings in money. And whether, if it's just a school district does the same, municipality, contractors, it's huge when you start looking at it. And it really is no less effort for us to do the liquid end of things compared to the bag end of things. And like I said, I talked about our employees, which that's one of our priorities. Keep our employees happy, make their life easy around here. And when we said we were going to switch to the liquids, I had some pushback from a few of them. They were used to spreading salt, turning on a salter, and away they go. And they did not want something new. We took the time to explain how it was going to work, how it was hopefully going to make their life a little bit easier on the job, and we got them on board. Now that they're on board, they'll all say the same thing. They don't want to spread salt anymore. They used to come back after spreading bag salt, completely covered in salt, from throwing a pail under their arm to go out and throw it on the sidewalks. And now they come back, they're clean. They don't have to lift 50-pound bags anymore. We choose to do our sidewalks with a hose reel on our sprayers. And there's a lot of ways you can do it. There's companies that make equipment also for doing that, but it's just what fits our operation the best. So they rather would go that route. And like I said, keeping your employees happy, morale high, that's all some of our main goals. And the customers as well. So our customers were extremely happy with the change. We went into it this last fall, summer, talked to all of our customers when we decided we were making the switch, and we said, hey, we're going to make the switch on this. We're not even going to offer rock salt anymore. I knew that there was a potential that I could lose some customers out of this deal, but it was not economical for us to be offering both and having trucks crisscross their routes for one person to use salt and one person to use liquids. And that's why we just decided, hey, we're going to go all the way on this. And luckily, we did not lose a single customer. So they all embraced it. They were all happy. Honestly, it's one of the easiest sales I've made in my time doing this. When we explained the benefits to it, we live in Wisconsin, so your business owners, everybody in Wisconsin, you're outdoor people. And when you start explaining the issues of the oversalting, the salts going in the lakes, it's, destroying the infrastructure. There's just so many things that when we took the time to explain it, they all embraced it and they all jumped on board. And like I said, it was very easy for me to get them to do that. And then once we started, because it was new to switch them all over, I was a little nervous going into it this year. I went from 5 customers doing it to 40, and I thought, I really hope this is going to work. So in December, we had a very active December. And I thought, what better time than the present to give them a call and see how this is working. One of our customers, it's a 3-story office building. They're very particular on their property. I called them and I said, what are your thoughts on the liquids? And they said, it's funny you called now because we had a issue with our rug company. For some reason, they didn't have a rug in any entrance for a week. And he said, we actually have no salt coming in on our hardwood floors. And that was kind of music to my ears a little bit, like, wow, what we're doing is working. This is great. And then he went on to say how they've had executives come in, they were commenting on it. Other customers coming in, commenting on it, asking, what are you guys doing? Your parking lot's melted, but there's no salt in the building. There's no salt anywhere. They couldn't see it. And so that was nice to hear that, hey, what we're doing is working. So as we've kept doing it, we keep trying to improve it even more. And that's, like I said, you can see in the pictures here, we've got a picture of a neighboring lot that was salted. And both of these pictures were taken after a same-day event. So the picture on the left is a neighboring lot that got salted. The picture on the right is of an apartment building that we take care of. So you can kind of see how there's not going to be much tracking in to these buildings, in which that's huge to these customers because the amount of money that they are paying to have these carpets cleaned, floors waxed, is astronomical. And when they're not having to do that anymore, well, that also is saving them money as well. And their employees can be going on to do other things that need to be done on the property inside. Another common misconception we ran into by the customers was when we proposed this idea and we talked about salt reduction, they said, well, how come you're raising our application rate when you're using less salt? And I looked at it in a number of ways. I looked at it, this is almost a specialty service. We put a lot of time into this. It's a lot of effort. We had to do a lot of research, and we are bettering them as well. And so that was one way I was able to sell it to them was, your maintenance costs, your infrastructure, whether it's handrails along sidewalks, stairways that won't rust out. And we also charged a little more because we believe that, your equipment is very important. If you don't have good equipment, you're not going to be able to provide good results, which can lead to over applicating breakdowns, all that good stuff. So that's why we decided to go with the VSI sprayers. There's a number of different manufacturers out there that make good sprayers as well. That's just the one we chose because our dealer is close by service wise. Um, and glad we did. The other reason we chose to go with a better sprayer is your ability to track the gallons, your ability to track your acres covered, um, which for liability purposes, if there is a slip and fall, we can say, hey, this is the time we were here, everything's recorded. Um, this is the gallons we put down, the acres we covered. And at the end of every snowfall, excuse me, the end of every snowfall, then the applicators email that report to Amanda, and she has records of everything that they did there. You can go with different types of sprayers that, some of them don't offer that capability, and that's why one reason we believe that, buy a little better sprayer to get that just a little more insurances on our end. Um, the other big thing with the liquids too is it depends, a lot depends on how clean of a scrape you can get when you're plowing. Your traditional plow, just a straight moldboard, it does okay. It's been used for years. But now there's a lot better things out there. There's live edges, sectional plows. They scrape so much better, in which then we are also able to reduce our gallons used, or if somebody still wants to salt, they're able to really reduce the amount of rock salt they can put down as well. And it really does make a big difference. To the point of that, we have a couple loaders fitted with live edge plows now. We've already purchased some other stuff, some sectional plows now that are out for trucks, for going into next year. So we believe that that is huge, and we're going to keep going forward with that as well. And along with doing the the liquids, of course, we started, and we're always looking for ways to cut our gallons. So we started running, straight brine, 23.3% salt. And last year, it worked. It has its challenges. You have to play temperatures, and that can be challenging. Last year was easy. It was warm and it didn't snow a whole lot. This year we actually had winter. So, with straight brine, we were running 90 to 100 gallons to the acre. Now, when you're running 90 to 100 gallons to the acre, that creates another problem. It creates issues of the sprayers not being able to cover as much ground because they're putting down a lot of product, and which on our end then equates to our trucks having to reload more. And if they're spending all this time reloading, they're not covering the ground, and then we're running out of time to get this stuff done before businesses open. So we looked for ways to cut our gallons. And that was, like I had just brought up too, on the live edge plows or the sectional plows, a cleaner scrape. That's key in being able to do that. The other way we found to do that is by using additives. And there's a lot of additives on the market. There's chloride-based additives, there's magnesium-based additives, sugar-based additives. You got to find what works. With the additives, we run a 95% salt brine and a 5% additive. Now that covers us about down to 0 degrees, 5 degrees, 0 degrees, right in there, which that also is a big part in the timing of that we have to get our work done. So by adding that 5%, we were able to cut our gallons on average down to 60 to 70 gallons per acre. So we're able to stretch that tank even farther, giving the ability to cover more ground, spend less time reloading. I know some people are running a 10% blend. If it does get cold below zero, we will run a 10% blend as well. The other thing with the additives we found out, regular salt brine, you get to 15 degrees, you can risk flash freezing. And for us, we don't have the ability to monitor each parking lot. So we kind of had to find a one size fits all. In doing big commercial buildings, the south side of the parking lot can be pavement temperature, can be 10 degrees difference than the north side of the parking lot. And so we couldn't run the risk of flash freezing. And so we decided to, just always run a 5% blend. And by running the 5% blend, we're still reducing our chlorides. Um, Compared, you raise them a little bit if you run the 10%, but not a lot. We decided that the 5% fit us really good. This last year, even when it got cold, we only had to run a 10% twice. Now, the catch with that is, too, is you have to be aware of the snowfall. Your moisture content in the snow and all that, because if you have too much moisture in the snow, you're going to dilute your brine down, and then you do still run the risk of refreezing, which why a lot of people will run a 10% blend. I feel that we're small enough and I'm hands-on enough that I can monitor this and make that decision pre-storm. Um, and I put on there too, 100 gallons to the acre of straight salt brine, that equates out to about 230 pounds of salt per acre. By going down to 70, we're at 161. At going to 60, we're at 138. So 60 is about the minimum we'll run. I will occasionally, if I have time, when I get behind my live edge plows, I will play with those gallons. And, I've gotten down to 50, 55 where they're scraping really clean. And with the live edge plows, you can see the two pictures I have there. The one is a parking lot. You can see how clean that is scraped. That's an old parking lot. There's a lot of dips in it, and they still are scraping that clean. So that's just the proof on, the difference of how those work compared to a straight moldboard plow. The second picture is of another parking lot behind a live edge plow that we do. That's a newer parking lot. I think repaved 2 years ago, but that is almost clean right there. So that's one there. I mean, I would not be afraid to spray that at 50 gallons to the acre if it's done snowing, because it's going to take care of that all day long. And the other benefit to the live edge plows and to the liquids is liquids work instantly. Salt, we put it down, it has to come in contact with the snow or ice to start making a brine to work, which that led to a lot of oversalting because the applicator wants to know that his lot is going to be clean or is comfortable when he pulls out, that it's not going to have an issue. So myself included, sometimes we would salt and then you'd look at it and go, this just isn't melting off. I've got to put a little more salt on it because I don't have time to run back here. That is one huge advantage to using the live edge plow and getting that pavement as clean as you can, and then using the liquids. Liquids work instantly. You are skipping that step of having to make the brine. Um, so that's those two things are just absolutely huge. That clean scrape. And that's where, like I said, we've really been able to cut our gallons per acre. And oh, by the way, if anybody feel free to ask questions, I will answer them at the end. I know Allison's going to keep track. I forgot to say that, but yeah, I do like questions, and so things to consider when making the change. Um, Number one, I'm going to stress is I don't have it on here. Talk to somebody that's been doing it. We were fortunate enough to know another company in the area that was a year or two ahead of us in this, as far as the spraying the liquids, the making the liquids, and two great guys. I'll probably mention their name at the end here, but gave us a lot of information, where they had to learn the hard way, and that's what I can say for anybody who's wanting to make the change is, you know, talk to somebody. There's people out there willing to talk to you, and they're going to save you a lot of headaches. It just that's a big key part. And always too, when you want to make this change to the customers, like I mentioned, I feel you should be able to charge a little more because you're doing them a huge savings on their end. Remind them on the cost of the infrastructure. I can only imagine what it costs to if somebody has tile floors, whether it's a school district or an office building or anything, what it costs to strip and wax those floors. And if you could maybe eliminate one of them a year, that could be another way of saying, hey, we could eliminate this, having to do this one time a year. Now, the money we saved, maybe we could put that towards some of this equipment as well. So remind them of that. Your door frames are going to last longer, the floors, and then the cleaning that they do have to do, they're going to cut their time down. And I also mentioned, excuse me, I also mentioned too previously, that the brine it does work faster. So, and I mentioned about the additives as well. Now, here's a lot that um, we had a dusting of snow. It was cold. I think we were 12 degrees that morning. And this is where your additive comes into play as well. You can see with the picture on the left, I made one pass through there, drove just tire tracks around there. That was already melting on its own. It wouldn't have melted all the way off on its own. It was too cold that morning. But the additives provide a residual, and that residual is working from underneath. And, the picture on the right, that's of the lot after I sprayed it. Um, That was 11 minutes. So your 11-minute turnaround on that, I sprayed the lot and I quick went around and did the sidewalks on the other side of the building, came back around and snapped the picture. That's how quick it works. And things to consider when making the change. This is a big part of it. Decide how you're going to get your brine, whether you're going to make it or buy it from somebody. You need to determine that. And there is a lot of thought that has to go into this. Brine making equipment is expensive. Storage tanks are expensive. A salt shed to hold your salt is expensive. It takes a lot. I know when I got into this, I thought I had it all figured out as far as cost. And when you start doing it, it it escalated quickly. Hoses, valves. And when you think you have your tanks in one place, you're going to move them four times because it's just how it works. You don't like how it is, or you think of something better. Um, so really put some thought into that, and that boils back to two of talk to somebody that's been doing it. And not everybody has to make their brine. That's it's expensive. So for somebody to whether it's a contractor with one or two trucks or a smaller municipality or a smaller school district, it might not be in the budget or might not be justifiable to own that brine making equipment. This that brine maker featured there new, I think, is pushing $80,000, and that's a lot to for anybody to swallow. So, that there are options out there for people, as far as to get the brine. Another thing to consider, as you can see in the picture, is the amount of space that takes. That inside of my building is 60 feet deep by 104 feet long, I believe. So that occupies one whole bay. So you need a lot of space. And if you're gonna make your brine, you need a lot of water. Water is key. Without water, you can't make the brine. As you can see, the two tanks behind the brine maker, those are each 5,000 gallon tanks. Those are just water tanks to feed that brine maker. We can make about 15 to 17,000 gallons of brine before we are out of water and have to let them tanks refill. So that is another downfall to wanting to make your brine. You have to have water. The tanks can't sit outside, at least not the water tanks. Your brine tanks can, but your water tanks can't. They're going to freeze up. And so that's another thing to consider is the space and also time. It is a time consuming process. It's gotten easier for us as the year went on. We've got it dialed in, but it still takes quite a bit of time. It's one thing to weigh out is if you don't have the staff or the ability to do it, maybe you're better off looking at other options of buying it. And like I brought up too, it is an additional upfront investment. The sprayers on the trucks are expensive. So that's why some people all look at this and go, well, we can't do that. And that is what I've heard too from talking to other contractors about the liquids is they've said, we'd like to do brine, but we can't afford it. And there's two ways of looking at that. So I've explained to them, you don't have to buy the brine maker. You can purchase the brine. There's people out there that sell it. And the other way I've explained it to them is if you're oversalting and you look at the cost of the sprayer, 20 some $1,000s for the sprayers that we buy, but you look at the number or the amount of salt that you're wasting going on the parking lot. My answer to them sometimes is maybe you can't afford to not do it. And when you start explaining it, it gets the gears turning a little bit. Um, and the other thing that I've brought up too, you know, is that we charge a little more for this application. In order to make this work, you have to sit down with a pencil and figure every little bit of cost, whether it's your salt cost, truck cost, tank cost. You need return on your investment. Otherwise, it doesn't pay to do this. Um, and on the contractor end, it's about profit for us. School districts, municipalities, it's about budgets for them. So if they can cut their salt usage back, all of a sudden it doesn't pay or it doesn't take that long to pay for that equipment. It's just the upfront cost can be a little overwhelming. And I've been talking to quite a few smaller contractors that are wanting to get into this, and that's their big hang up. So we're trying to provide them with some options as well. We're open to talking to anybody on it. And like I said, ultimately it's my opinion, a specialty service that you're offering. Not everybody is out there doing it. And things to consider when making the change is going to be your equipment and sprayers. I've mentioned the live edge plows. I've mentioned the sprayers. Really put some thought into it. Otherwise, I think you're going to regret it. Determine what your goals are. If are your goals to save money or to make more profit? Are your goals, happier employees? Are your goals, less salt in the lakes? Really sit down, figure it out. So when you go to whether you have to go to a board and propose your ideas or whether you're going to your customers and proposing those ideas, you have that. Um, Another reason why I think the salt reduction is going to be extremely crucial this upcoming year. I was at a meeting last week and a lot of not good news came out of that meeting as far as salt goes. We all know there's a salt shortage this year. In 20 years of doing this, I've seen salt get tight in the past. I've never seen it get to where it is now. And when it came this year, it came quick of, hey, salt's getting a little short to we can't get salt. And if you could, then there was a lot of price gouging going on out there. It was salt that was $100 a ton in the fall. People were being charged two, three, 400, depending on location, which is ridiculous. At that point, nobody can make any money. And so if you can find a way to reduce your salt, whether it's using liquids or treated rock salt or doing a pre-wet system, I think those are all going to be beneficial. And the salt companies, they're already restructuring their contracts, and they're not in anybody's favor other than the salt company for the upcoming year. Of it used to be you would have to take 80% of what you were contracting. Now they are restructuring those to where you have to take 100%, which I would think is going to be pretty hard to know what you're going to use, considering that last year we had no snow hardly, so nobody used much salt. To this year, we've had a lot of events. People used a lot of salt. Well, how do you know what you're going to use next year? And if you have to take 100%, do you have the storage for that? So one way by doing the liquids is you don't need such storage. It's a lot less salt to make the brine. If you're using treated salt, you're putting down a lot less per acre. And I think people really need to dig into this year. Like I said, when it was a real eye opener last week at this meeting of uh, things are not going to be good next year if we get snow again. I think a lot of people are going to suffer on this, and I don't want to see that happen to anybody. So that's a lot of what I was mainly concerned about, and like I said, the salt shortage, and personally, I'm glad we made the switch to liquids. I was extremely nervous about going all in on it. It was a lot of money. This year being an active winter, it paid for itself in 1 year and then some. So to be able to get that return on the investment made it worth it. And like I said, it was very expensive and a very tough decision, especially coming off of last winter, not making a lot of money on snow. We were even questioning of whether we wanted to continue in the snow industry. It was very frustrating, and we decided that we're going to stay with it and we're going to change how we do it. And it really worked out in our benefit. And I guess to wrap it up here, I would like to say to whether it's municipalities, school districts, contractors, anybody that's watching or anybody that will watch the YouTube video, it's a lot to digest. I am open to talking to anybody. Allison knows how to get a hold of me, or we have a website, CJ's Lawn and Snow. We're on Facebook. We're soon going to be available. Badgerland Brine, we are starting another entity. That'll be up and running here very shortly. But there's also a number of other people that you can talk to. I know there's people from all over the state probably going to see this. So there's us. There's Best Brine over in DeForest, two great guys that know a lot about it. That's actually two guys that really helped me get going in this. It'd be well worth your time to talk to them. Green Hills Supply down in Milwaukee. He's also very knowledgeable on this, very knowledgeable on treated salt. Um, so, um, that being said, I think that's all I have, and I'd love to hear some questions.
Great. Thank you, Russ. That was
You betcha.
excellent. I'm going to just end the screen share here. So we pop back up again for folks. And it does look we've got over a dozen people joining live. I think we had just over 40 people who registered to get the link. And I know you mentioned folks across the state. We actually have folks across the country. There were some people
Cool.
from Ohio, Maine. Yeah, in addition, I mean, a lot of people, mostly folks from Wisconsin. So just a shout out to everybody, but please do put some questions into the chat. I'll also, in a moment here, check my email for questions if you have any. My email, I think, yes, is in the chat, wisaltwise@gmail.com. I did drop links to CJ's Lawn and Snow website as well as CJ's Facebook page. So those are both in the chat as well for you to grab those. And yeah, and if people want to reach out to me, I can put you directly in touch with Russ and Amanda. So while we're waiting for some questions here, I did have I guess I had a couple questions. So uh, the first was I loved the photos, the side by side photos, and I know you've caught the bug clearly of taking photos of excess salt at this point. But one question, you had a page with photos where you'd use your Metal Plus, those sectional blades, and it was such a clean scrape. So I'm curious, did you do anti-icing ahead of time? Did you apply brine before that event, or was that just the blades?
That was just the blades. We have found that using the with using a 5% additive, we do not anti-ice. We only post-treat.
Mm.
So we started doing some anti-icing in the beginning, and then we thought, hey, once we plowed the snow away, we could see how clean it was scraping. So then we decided, like, why pre-treat? Number one, it's costing our customers more. And I always look at it too of like, I can, the more I take out of their budget in the winter months, it's the less it's around for my summer maintenance. So we really try to work with our customers on this. And when we saw how clean it was scraping, how the additives, the residual was working, so we only post-treat unless there's going to be some freezing rain coming or a daytime snowstorm, we might go post-treat at a time just because there's a lot of traffic to keep it from bonding to the pavement. But if it's an after-hours snowfall, we are only post-treating. So we're only having to applicate one time.
No, that's great. Thanks for that. Yeah, clarification. And I mean, I think we all see it, right? Sometimes you get the weather supposedly coming your way. People go ahead and either anti-ice with liquids or worse yet, kind of do a pre-treatment with rock salt and then the event doesn't come. So yeah. I had just heard my phone buzz. We got a question that came in on Gmail. So let me pull this up here. Um, this person asked if you've given any thought into reusing industrial brine, high strength chloride wastewater from industries around the state for this purpose. So, what are your thoughts on kind of the logistics and ability to reuse brine versus making your own brine as a businessman? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great idea. Right now, it's kind of hard logistically, and it's due to staffing. It would require more people, to go because you're gonna have to have tanks set up at these places to capture that. And then you're gonna have to somehow transfer that back to other storage tanks. So there's a lot of logistics in it. I think down the road, there's an opportunity for more of it. Right now, it just doesn't fit into ours. And like I said, the big thing is it's space. It takes up, if you go to these big apartment buildings, I don't know what size tank you would need to put in their basement or underground parking to capture this wherever their system is. But it's the transportation back and forth, we have to weigh that out because that's a lot of time, fuel, running back and forth as well. On certain sites, if you could, I think it'd be more feasible if you could have a tank there and then use right out of that tank in the winter months. But I'm worried that you wouldn't be able to hold enough, there for all the summer months. You'd somehow have to transfer some of that out because they're going to produce more than what we're going to use in the winter months.
Yeah. I just dropped into the chat a link to the USDA Forest Products Lab. So that's one place that I know right now is reusing their own brine on site. But Russ, like you just said, they are producing that brine year round, right? Only using it in the winter. So they have been able to work with, I think it's some facility staff at UW campus, which is right there, right? And they've also helped to use some of that. But yeah, it's there. They can put it down on their property. They do have some space for it, but all of those things are hurdles. I know that, give me a second, Outagamie County Highway Department, I think, was approached by Oh Snap Pickle Company just down the road about maybe utilizing their waste brine, but it's only, I want to say 3% chloride, so that's a lot of liquid, right?
Yep.
And like you said, year round, like logistically, it is challenging as much as I want to help connect those folks and figure out what we can do. Because I think right now a lot of the brine gets either, field applied, right, or ends up in Lake Michigan, the Wisconsin River, because those are considered like big enough sources of water that there is some dilution, but not great.
Yeah. In the tough part to that is to even if we had to transport it back in the winter months, that's not the end of the world. But if you run into having a week of a few snow events in a row, now all of a sudden all the employees they're tired. I mean, some of them storms that they're out there for 14, 16 hours and they're fatigued and it's like I really want to minimize their workload. I want to get them home too, or I'm going to burn them out. And it's so right now it's just easier for us to make it here. But no, I do think there is going to be some ways to do that in the future. It's it's kind of an ongoing project. We've kind of got this figured out, so now it's like maybe we can look at that for the next project.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, you've been tackling quite a bit these last couple of years. Another question here. You mentioned the additive, but can you share what additive you're using?
I use Turbo Melt, and I used to use Turbo Melt is a sugar-based additive. They have a small percentage of magnesium in it. We used to use a calcium-based additive. The calcium works faster. Calcium creates heat, so it works faster. It doesn't last as long. The residual wasn't there, and we were running a higher blend when we were running the calcium too. And with using this turbo melt, like I said, I've been running the 95% salt brine, 5% blend, and been extremely happy with it. Your calcium-based additive, they add corrosion inhibitors, they add tackifiers in, so when you spray it, it sticks right there. The turbo melt is a natural tackifier. The sugars in it are the natural tackifier. So it's one less added product there. It cost a couple pennies more a gallon, but when we were able to go from 90/10 to 95/5, and you start weighing that out, and the residuals there longer, and turbo melt's brown in color, even though, and that did scare people, it's brown in color. Is that going to track in? It does not. And that's how I know the residuals there because after you plow, you back away from the snow pile, you can see a little brown in that snow pile. So that tells me my product is still there working from the last storm.
Thank you. One other question. What was the name you mentioned, like Badger Brine? Is it you're going to
Badger,
be, yeah,
Badgerland brine.
Badger Wind.
It's going. We're just waiting on our website right now, which should be up here very soon. So we decided to set that entity up as we're starting to work with municipalities. We're working with a couple school districts, and it was like we're just going to set something separate up for that. So
Sounds like I think the question is like, are you going to be selling brine
yes,
through that? Okay. Yeah, I
yes.
think for a lot of people, as you've identified, right, like using brine, getting comfortable with it is one thing. Making brine is a whole nother beast, and not everybody wants to take on both of those.
Well, and
Um,
if you make the brine, I mean, you run the risk of it's easier now because we've been doing it. But if your salinity gets too high, then the salt and the water separate and then it freezes faster. And you've really got to be on top of it. And that's, I think, what scares people a little bit too. And that's why I threw it out there of, we're making it, we're selling it. Best Brine and DeForest is making it, selling it. Green Hills is, they do it and they get additive down there. There's people out there that really know what they're doing and are, I wouldn't be afraid to recommend them to any contractor if they don't want to make it because I know that they're producing good products.
Well, it looks like those are the questions that I have right now. Um, I'll just give people a moment here because I know there's a little bit of a delay between what we're saying and then folks on the webinar. So if anybody wants to throw another question in the chat or email me, I'll take a look at both of those here. Otherwise, yeah, thanks so much, Russ. This was
You
great.
bet.
And like I said, I do plan to probably grab some little snips of this and share it out there in future saltwise trainings. I'm also, you got my gears turning a little bit since we do have this kind of group of folks like you, the Beningers up into Forest, like, maybe it's some fall kind of like open house tour where we visit a couple of these brine making facilities and get some contractors or like you said, even some school districts, just see a little bit more what's happening. These are places you can get brine. This is how it's been working.
Yep.
Be great. So, all right. Well, I don't see any other questions at this point. So I'm gonna end today's live stream. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, you can email me and happy to put you guys in touch. Otherwise, yeah, just stay tuned for future webinars and events. And I know Russ is going to be around. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you.